Humanity joins the galactic stage. In the year 2157, humanity finally achieved the dream of faster-than-light travel, allowing them to journey beyond the confines of their solar system and explore the wonders of the galaxy. As they ventured out into the cosmos, they discovered they were not alone. Countless alien races had already spread across the stars, forming a vast interstellar alliance known as the Galactic Federation. Eager to take their place on this galactic stage, humanity petitioned to join the Federation. However, to the advanced alien civilizations, these newcomers were primitive, barely scratching the surface of the technological wonders the other races had long since mastered. Many saw humans as little more than hairless apes, fumbling their way into a universe they barely understood. Despite the condescension and thinly veiled mockery, human diplomats persisted, determined to prove humanity's worth. After years of negotiation and political maneuvering, they managed to secure an invitation to the annual Galactic Summit, where the most pressing matters of the galaxy were discussed and debated. A delegation of humanity's brightest minds, scientists, diplomats, and military leaders, arrived at the shimmering space station Celestial Concord, the neutral ground where the summit was held. They marveled at the alien technologies on display, the elegant curves of the station's architecture melding seamlessly with advanced holographic interfaces and gravity-defying walkways. As the humans made their way to the central auditorium, hushed whispers and derisive chuckles followed in their wake. Alien delegates eyed their simple attire and unaugmented bodies with a mix of curiosity and disdain. The lead human diplomat, Ambassador Evelyn Xiu, held her head high, her steely gaze masking the twinge of worry she felt. Everything rode on this moment. The auditorium was a cavernous space, with soaring ceilings and hovering platforms arrayed in a vast semicircle. Each platform held a delegation from a different alien race, their unique physiologies and technologies on full display. At the center of the room, a raised dais hosted the Galactic Council, the Federation's ruling body. As the human delegation took their place on a small platform near the edge of the auditorium, the chatter gradually died down. A tall, willowy alien with shimmering blue skin and luminous eyes stepped forward on the central dais. High Counselor Xyloth, the leader of the Galactic Federation. Esteemed delegates, Xyloth began, his voice resonating through the auditorium. We gather here today to discuss matters of great import to the Galactic Federation. But first, let us welcome our newest petitioners, the humans of Earth. A smattering of polite applause echoed through the chamber, tinged with an undercurrent of amusement. Ambassador Xiu stepped forward, steeling herself. Thank you, High Counselor Xyloth. It is an honor to stand before you today, representing the people of Earth. We come bearing news of a great breakthrough, one we believe will change the course of galactic history. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates, some curious, others dismissive. Chu continued, Our scientists have unlocked the secrets of seventh-dimensional physics, allowing us to create a warship capable of harnessing the power of higher dimensions. We call it the Tesseract. As if on cue, a holographic display flickered to life above the human platform, showing a sleek, angular vessel unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Glowing sigils pulsed along its hull, hinting at the exotic technologies within. The auditorium erupted into a cacophony of laughter and jeers. Seventh-dimensional physics, scoffed a bulbous, red-skinned alien. These primates can barely harness fusion power, and they claim to have mastered higher dimensions. Others joined in, mocking the human claims. Xyloth raised a slender hand, silencing the crowd. Ambassador Chu, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, surely you must understand our skepticism. Many races have sought to unlock the secrets of higher dimensions, and all have failed. What makes you believe humanity has succeeded where the greatest minds of the galaxy have not? Xiu stood firm, her voice unwavering. We have not only theorized the principles of seventh-dimensional manipulation, but we have built a functioning prototype. The Tesseract is real, and it will revolutionize space travel and warfare as we know it. A towering insectoid alien chittered, its mandibles clicking in amusement. Bold claims, human. But words are cheap. Show us this marvel, if it truly exists. Shu nodded to her delegation, and a human scientist stepped forward, a small crystalline device in his hand. This is the heart of the Tesseract, a seventh-dimensional drive core. When activated, it will allow the ship to slip between the folds of reality, bypassing normal space to achieve speeds and maneuverability unheard of in conventional propulsion systems. As the scientist held up the device, it began to glow with an otherworldly light, pulsing in strange, non-Euclidean patterns. The aliens leaned forward, some curious, others dubious. Suddenly, the device let out a high-pitched whine, and the light winked out. The scientist frowned, tapping at the inert crystal. The auditorium once again filled with mocking laughter. It seems your vaunted seventh-dimensional technology is as reliable as your claims, sneered a crystalline alien, its facets glinting with cruel amusement. Ambassador Xu's face burned with embarrassment, but she refused to back down. This is merely a prototype, a proof of concept. The true Tesseract is far more advanced and reliable. We came here to offer this technology to the Galactic Federation, to share in the benefits of our discovery. High Counselor Xyloth leaned forward, his luminous eyes narrowing. And what would you ask in return for this supposed wonder technology? Qiu met his gaze unflinchingly. Recognition, a seat on this council, and a voice in the decisions that shape the galaxy. The auditorium erupted into chaos, alien delegates shouting and gesticulating wildly. Xyloth raised his hands, his voice booming over the din. Enough. The humans have made their case, and while their claims are intriguing, we cannot simply take them at their word. Ambassador Qiu, if your seventh-dimensional warship is truly as capable as you say, then you should have no problem demonstrating its prowess. A glimmer of hope flickered in Qiu's eyes. What do you propose, High Counselor? Xyloth smiled thinly. A race. Your Tesseract against the swiftest ship in the Galactic Federation. If your vessel proves victorious, then humanity will have earned its place among the great races of the galaxy. But if it fails, you will withdraw your petition and return to your little corner of the universe until such time as you can offer something of true value. Qiu's heart raced, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. She knew the Tesseract was untested, its full capabilities still unknown. But this was the chance humanity had been waiting for, the opportunity to prove their worth on the galactic stage. She squared her shoulders, meeting Xyloth's gaze with unwavering determination. We accept your challenge, High Counselor. The Tesseract will prove the might of human ingenuity and courage, and when we emerge victorious, the galaxy will remember the day humanity took its rightful place among the stars. As the human delegation filed out of the auditorium, Ambassador Qiu's mind raced with the enormity of the task before them. They had just wagered humanity's future on an untested prototype, a gamble that could either catapult them to the forefront of galactic politics or relegate them to eternal obscurity. But Qiu knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They had come too far, fought too hard, to let this opportunity slip through their fingers. The Tesseract would fly, and the galaxy would tremble before the might of the seventh dimension. The race was on, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The gauntlet is thrown. Ambassador Evelyn Tsiu stared out the viewport of the human embassy ship, her eyes fixed on the shimmering expanse of the celestial Concord. The space station hung against the starry backdrop like a glittering jewel, a testament to the technological wonders of the Galactic Federation. But for Qiu, it represented something far more significant, the stage upon which humanity would prove its worth. The challenge laid down by High Counselor Xyloth echoed in her mind. A race between the Tesseract, humanity's untested seventh-dimensional warship, and the swiftest vessel in the Galactic Federation. It was a daunting prospect, one that filled her with equal parts excitement and trepidation. A soft chime announced a visitor, drawing Qiu from her thoughts. She turned to see Dr. Liam Rensselaer, the lead scientist behind the Tesseract project, enter the room. His face was drawn, his eyes shadowed by the weight of the task before them. "Ambassador," he greeted, his voice tight with concern. "We need to talk about the race." Sue gestured for him to sit, her own brow furrowing. "What's on your mind, Doctor?" Rensselaer leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly before him. "I have concerns about the Tesseract's readiness. The seventh dimensional drive is still highly experimental, and we haven't had nearly enough time to test its full capabilities. Pushing it too hard, too soon, could have catastrophic consequences." Sue sighed, the weight of her decision settling heavily upon her shoulders. "I understand your concerns, Doctor. But we don't have the luxury of time. The Galactic Federation has given us this one chance to prove ourselves, and we can't afford to let it slip away." Rensselaer shook his head, frustration etched into his features. "But at what cost? If the Tesseract fails, if something goes wrong, it could set humanity back decades, if not centuries. We need more time to properly calibrate the drive, to ensure its stability." "And how much time would be enough?" Sue countered, her voice firm. "A year. A decade. The galaxy won't wait for us, Doctor. We have to seize this opportunity, here and now, or risk being left behind forever." The scientist fell silent, his gaze distant. Sue softened her tone, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I know the risks, Liam, but I also know the potential. The Tesseract represents more than just a faster ship. It's a symbol of humanity's ingenuity, our determination to reach beyond our grasp. If we succeed, it will change everything." Rensselaer met her eyes, a glimmer of resolve hardening his features. "Then we'd best get to work, Ambassador. If we're going to win this race, we'll need to push the Tesseract to its limits and pray it holds together." Sue nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "I have faith in you and your team, Doctor. You've already accomplished the impossible by building the Tesseract. Now, it's time to show the galaxy what it can really do." As Rensselaer left to begin the feverish work of preparing the Tesseract for the race, Sue turned back to the viewport, her gaze drawn once more to the glittering expanse of the celestial Concord. Somewhere within that vast station, the alien delegates were no doubt mocking humanity's audacity, betting on their inevitable failure. But Sue knew better. She had seen the fire in the eyes of her people, the unbreakable spirit that had carried them to the stars. Humanity would not be underestimated, not anymore. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity as the Tesseract underwent a flurry of testing and modifications. Dr. Rensselaer and his team worked around the clock, pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion as they sought to unlock the full potential of the seventh dimensional drive. Sue watched their progress with a mix of hope and anxiety, her mind constantly turning over the potential outcomes of the race. If they won, humanity would be catapulted to the forefront of galactic politics, their voice finally heard on the stage of the Galactic Federation. But if they lost, she shook her head, banishing the thought. Failure was not an option. The Tesseract would fly, and it would fly faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. As the day of the race drew near, the human delegation gathered in the hangar bay of the celestial Concord, their eyes fixed on the sleek, angular form of the Tesseract. The ship seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, the glowing sigils along its hull casting an eerie light across the assembled faces. Sue stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the gathered crew. "This is it," she said, her voice ringing with determination. "The moment we've all been waiting for. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Today, we make history." A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd, their faces set with grim resolve. At the front of the group, Captain Natalia Ivanovna stood tall, her shoulders squared beneath the weight of her duty. As the chosen pilot of the Tesseract, the fate of the mission rested squarely upon her shoulders. Sue met the captain's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. Ivanovna nodded, her jaw set with determination. "We won't let you down, Ambassador," she said, her voice unwavering. The Tesseract will fly true, and we will bring glory to humanity." With a final nod, Ivanovna turned and strode towards the waiting ship, her crew falling into step behind her. As they boarded the Tesseract, the hum of the seventh dimensional drive grew louder, filling the hangar with an electric anticipation. Zhu and the rest of the delegation watched as the ship's hatch sealed shut, the pulsing signals along its hull growing brighter with each passing moment. Through the viewport, they could see Ivanovna and her crew taking their positions, their faces lit by the glow of holographic displays. A hush fell over the hangar as the final countdown began, the seconds ticking away with agonizing slowness. Zhu held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched the Tesseract's engines flare to life. And then, with a blinding flash of light, the ship vanished, slipping between the folds of reality as it hurtled towards the starting line of the race. In that moment, the fate of humanity hung in the balance, suspended between the infinite possibilities of the cosmos. Zhu closed her eyes, a silent prayer on her lips. "Godspeed, Captain Ivanovna," she whispered. "Bring us victory and show the galaxy the true strength of the human spirit." As the Tesseract streaked through the void, the hopes and dreams of an entire species rode with it, carried on the wings of a ship that defied the very fabric of the universe. The race had begun, and the future of humanity would be forged in the crucible of the stars. Unexpected breakthrough. Captain Natalia Ivanovna sat at the helm of the Tesseract, her eyes fixed on the shimmering redouts that danced across the holographic displays. Around her, the ship thrummed with power, the seventh dimensional drive pulsing with an otherworldly energy that set her teeth on edge. They had been racing for what felt like an eternity, slipping through the folds of reality in a dizzying cascade of impossible geometries. The alien vessel they were competing against, a sleek, dart-like craft of burnished silver, had proven to be a formidable opponent, matching the Tesseract's every move with uncanny precision. But Ivanovna was not one to back down from a challenge. She had trained for this moment, pushing herself to the limits of human endurance in order to master the intricacies of the seventh dimensional drive. And now, with the fate of humanity riding on her shoulders, she was determined to push the Tesseract to its breaking point. "Status report," she barked, her gaze never leaving the redouts. "Drive core holding steady at 97% capacity," replied Lieutenant Mikhail Volkov, the ship's chief engineer. "Dimensional flux within acceptable parameters." Ivanovna nodded, a bead of sweat trickling down her temple. "And our competitor?" "Still neck and neck with us," reported navigator Oksana Jarova, her fingers flying across the holographic controls. "They're matching our every move." A flicker of frustration crossed Ivanovna's face. The Tesseract was performing admirably, but it wasn't enough. They needed an edge, something to give them the boost they needed to pull ahead. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the cockpit, the holographic displays flashing red with warning. Ivanovna's heart leaped into her throat as she scanned the readouts, her mind racing to identify the source of the problem. "Report," she snapped, her voice tight with urgency. Volkov's face was ashen as he studied the data streaming across his screens. "Captain, the drive core is overloading. The seventh dimensional flux is spiking beyond safe levels." Ivanovna's eyes widened in horror. An overload of the drive core could tear the ship apart, scattering them across the infinite dimensions of the cosmos. They had to act fast, or all would be lost. "Shut it down," she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Cut power to the core and bring us back to normal space." But even as the words left her lips, she knew it was too late. The Tesseract shuddered violently, the wrenching sensation of dimensional displacement tearing at the fabric of reality around them. In a blinding flash of light, the ship vanished from the racecourse, hurled into the swirling maelstrom of the seventh dimension. Ivanovna clung to her seat, her knuckles white with the force of her grip. Around her, the cockpit was awash in a kaleidoscope of impossible colors, the ship's systems screaming in protest as they were subjected to forces beyond human comprehension. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the chaos subsided. The Tesseract hung in an eerie silence, the only sound the ragged breathing of its crew. Ivanovna blinked, her eyes adjusting to the sudden stillness. The holographic displays were dark, the ship's systems offline, but they were alive, and that was all that mattered. "Damage report," she croaked, her throat raw from the screaming she hadn't realized she'd been doing. Volkov shook his head, his face a mask of confusion. "All systems nominal, Captain. The drive core is stable. It's as if nothing happened." Ivanovna frowned, her mind racing to make sense of the situation. They had been on the brink of destruction, the seventh dimensional flux threatening to tear them apart. And yet, here they were, unscathed. It was then that she noticed the change. The holographic displays were coming back online, but they were different. Strange, alien sigils scrolled across the screens, pulsing with an otherworldly light, and the ship itself, it had transformed. The sleek, angular hull of the Tesseract was now covered in glowing glyphs, the same symbols that danced across the displays. "What the hell?" Ivanovna breathed, her eyes wide with astonishment. Charova, the navigator, leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the screens. "Captain, these readings, they're off the charts. The seventh dimensional flux is stable, but it's different. It's like the ship has evolved." Ivanovna's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. They had been thrown into the heart of the seventh dimension, subjected to forces beyond human understanding, and somehow the Tesseract had not only survived, but had been transformed. A slow smile spread across her face as realization dawned. The overload, the dimensional displacement, it had been the key. The ship had adapted, unlocking the full potential of the seventh dimensional drive. "Volkov," she said, her voice tinged with excitement, "can you make sense of these new systems?" The chief engineer nodded, his fingers already flying across the holographic controls. "I think so, Captain. It's like the ship is guiding me, showing me the way." Ivanovna's smile widened. "Then let's see what this baby can really do." With a flick of her wrist, she brought the ship's engines online, the seventh dimensional drive humming with newfound power. The Tesseract leaped forward, slicing through the fabric of reality like a hot knife through butter. Stars streaked past the viewport in dizzying arcs, the ship moving with a speed and grace that defied comprehension. In a matter of moments, they had returned to the race course, the alien vessel a mere speck in the distance. Ivanovna's heart soared as she watched the gap between them close, the Tesseract's newfound power propelling them forward with breathtaking speed. And then, with a final burst of acceleration, they crossed the finish line, the alien ship left far behind in their wake. The cockpit erupted in cheers, the crew's jubilation echoing through the halls of the Tesseract. Ivanovna leaned back in her seat, a sense of profound satisfaction washing over her. They had done it. Against all odds, they had unlocked the true potential of the seventh dimensional drive and secured a victory for humanity. But even as she savored the moment, her thoughts turned to the strange glyphs that now adorned the ship's hull. There was something about them, a nagging sense of unease that tugged at the edges of her mind. What secrets did they hold? What mysteries lay hidden within the heart of the seventh dimension? Ivanovna didn't know, but one thing was certain. The Tesseract had been changed by its journey, and the consequences of that change were yet to be fully understood. For now, though, she would revel in their triumph. Humanity had proven itself on the galactic stage, and the future was bright with possibility. The Tesseract had carried them to victory, and Ivanovna knew that it would carry them to even greater heights in the days to come. As the ship streaked through the void, the alien glyphs pulsing with an otherworldly light, Ivanovna couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the incredible journey that lay ahead. The seventh dimension had opened up a whole new realm of possibilities, and she was determined to explore every last one of them. The Tesseract had been reborn, and with it, the destiny of humanity itself. The galaxy would never be the same, and Ivanovna knew that she and her crew would be at the forefront of the coming revolution. It was a daunting prospect, but one that filled her with a sense of exhilaration. The future was theirs to shape, and with the power of the seventh dimension at their fingertips, there was no limit to what they could achieve. As the Tesseract raced towards the shimmering expanse of the celestial concord, Ivanovna couldn't help but smile. The race had been won, but the true adventure was only just beginning. The race begins. The celestial concord hung in the void of space, a glittering jewel amidst the endless expanse of stars. On the station's observation deck, Ambassador Evelyn Tsiu stood beside High Counselor Xylov and the other members of the Galactic Council, their eyes fixed on the large holographic display that dominated the room. The display showed a real-time feed of the racecourse, a twisting, turning track that wound its way through the heart of a nearby nebula. The course had been designed to test the limits of even the most advanced ships, with treacherous asteroid fields, gravity wells, and spatial anomalies scattered throughout. As they watched, two ships appeared at the starting line, their hulls gleaming in the light of the nearby stars. One was the Tesseract, its angular lines and pulsing sigils a stark contrast to the sleek, organic curves of its competitor, a ship of Zolof's own species, the Galaxy. Tsiu felt a thrill of anticipation as she watched the ships hover at the starting line, their engines thrumming with barely contained power. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the moment when humanity would prove its worth on the galactic stage. Beside her, Xylov leaned forward, his luminous eyes fixed on the display. "Your ship looks interesting, Ambassador," he remarked, his tone carefully neutral. "But looks can be deceiving. Let us see how it performs under real conditions." Tsiu nodded, her gaze never leaving the display. She knew that the Tesseract was more than just a pretty facade. It was a marvel of human ingenuity, a ship that could harness the power of the seventh dimension itself. And with Captain Natalia Ivanovna at the helm, she had no doubt that it would prove its worth. A hush fell over the observation deck as the countdown began, the numbers flashing on the display in bold, glowing letters. 3, 2, 1. And then, with a burst of light, the ships were off, rocketing forward with breathtaking speed. The Galaxy ship, sleek and streamlined, quickly pulled ahead, its advanced engines propelling it forward at incredible velocities. But the Tesseract remained motionless, hovering at the starting line as if frozen in place. Tsiu felt her heart sink as she watched the display, a sense of dread washing over her. Had something gone wrong? Had the seventh dimensional drive failed at the crucial moment? Beside her, Xylov chuckled, his tone smug. "It seems your vaunted ship is having some trouble, Ambassador. Perhaps you overestimated its capabilities." But even as the words left his lips, the Tesseract shuddered, the glowing sigils on its hull pulsing with sudden intensity. And then, in a flash of blinding light, it vanished, disappearing from the display as if it had never been. For a moment, the observation deck was silent, the assembled dignitaries staring at the display in shocked disbelief. And then, a murmur of excitement rippled through the room as the Tesseract reappeared, far ahead of the Galaxy ship, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly light. Tsiu felt a surge of triumph as she watched the Tesseract streak through the nebula, weaving through the asteroid fields and gravity wells with effortless grace. The ship moved with a fluidity that defied comprehension, slipping through the fabric of space itself as if it were no more than a veil to be parted. The Galaxy ship, by contrast, seemed to struggle, its engines straining as it fought to keep pace with the Tesseract. The gap between the two ships widened with each passing second, the Tesseract pulling further and further ahead. And then, with a final burst of acceleration, the Tesseract crossed the finish line, a full minute ahead of its competitor. The observation deck erupted in cheers, the human delegation leaping to their feet in jubilation. Tsiu turned to Xylov, a triumphant smile on her face. "It seems your doubts were misplaced, High Counselor. The Tesseract has proven its worth, and humanity with it." Xylov's face was unreadable, his eyes fixed on the display. "So it would seem, Ambassador. But a single victory does not make a species great. You have won the race, But the true test is yet to come. Chu's smile faded, a flicker of unease passing across her face. What do you mean? Xyloth turned to face her, his expression grave. The seventh dimension is not a toy to be played with, Ambassador. There are forces at work beyond your understanding. Forces that could destroy us all if we are not careful. Chu opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, an alarm blared through the observation deck, the holographic display flashing red with warning. On the screen, a new ship had appeared, a vessel of pure darkness that seemed to absorb the very light around it. It was massive, dwarfing even the Tesseract in size, and it was moving with a speed that defied belief. Xyloth's face paled, his eyes widening in horror. No, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the blaring alarms. It cannot be. Chu turned to him, her heart pounding in her chest. What is it? What's happening? Xyloth shook his head, his expression grim. The Void Wraiths. They have returned. As Chu watched, helpless, the dark ship opened fire, lances of pure darkness tearing through the assembled ships of the Galactic Federation. The Kilaxi ship was the first to fall, its hull shattering like glass under the onslaught. And then the dark ship turned its attention to the Tesseract, its weapons glowing with an unholy light. Chu's heart leaped into her throat as she watched, her mind racing with the realization of what was about to happen. But even as the dark ship fired, the Tesseract shimmered, the alien glyphs on its hull pulsing with sudden intensity. A shimmering field of energy sprang into existence around the ship, absorbing the dark lances and dissipating them harmlessly into the void. For a moment, the observation deck was silent, the assembled dignitaries staring at the display in shocked disbelief. And then, as one, they turned to Chu, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. Chu swallowed hard, her mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. The Tesseract had just demonstrated a power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, a power that could change the course of history itself. But even as she savored the moment of triumph, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in the pit of her stomach. Xyloth's words echoed in her mind, a warning of the dangers that lay ahead. The Void Wraiths, whoever or whatever they were, posed a threat unlike any humanity had ever faced, and if they were not stopped, the consequences could be catastrophic. As the Tesseract hung in space, the alien glyphs on its hull pulsing with an otherworldly light, Chu knew that the true test was only just beginning. The race had been won, but the real battle was yet to come. And she would be damned if she let humanity face it alone. An ominous warning. In the aftermath of the Void Wraith attack, the Celestial Concord was a hive of activity. Repair crews worked around the clock to mend the damage wrought by the dark ship's weapons, while the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the implications of this new threat. Ambassador Evelyn Tsiu stood before the council, her expression grim as she recounted the events of the race. The Tesseract's performance speaks for itself, she said, her voice ringing through the chamber. But more than that, it has shown us that humanity is ready to take its place as a true partner in the Galactic Federation. There were murmurs of assent from the assembled dignitaries, but Chu could see the fear in their eyes. The Void Wraiths had struck without warning, their technology far beyond anything the Federation had ever seen. If they were to stand a chance against this new enemy, they would need every ally they could get. As the council debated and argued, Chu's thoughts turned to the Tesseract and its crew. Captain Ivanovna and her team had performed admirably, pushing the ship to its limits and beyond. But the strange glyphs that had appeared on the ship's hull during the race still troubled her, a nagging sense of unease that she couldn't quite shake. She was jolted from her thoughts by a sudden commotion outside the council chambers. The doors burst open, and a disheveled figure stumbled into the room, his face pale and his eyes wide with terror. It was Dr. Liam Rensselaer, the lead scientist behind the Tesseract project. He staggered forward, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he clutched at a datapad with trembling hands. "Ambassador," he cried, his voice cracking with urgency. We have to stop the Tesseract. The glyphs are changing. Shu's heart leaped into her throat as she rushed forward, her eyes scanning the datapad in Rensselaer's hands. What she saw there made her blood run cold. The glyphs on the Tesseract's hull were indeed changing, their patterns shifting and morphing before her eyes. But more than that, they were coalescing into a message, a warning that chilled her to the bone. "The Void Wraiths are coming," she read aloud, her voice trembling. "The seventh dimension is their domain, and they will stop at nothing to claim it." The council chamber erupted into chaos, dignitaries shouting and arguing as they struggled to make sense of this new revelation. But Shu's mind was racing, piecing together the clues that had been staring her in the face all along. The Tesseract's strange behavior during the race, the way it had seemed to move with a will of its own, it all made sense now. The ship had been trying to warn them, to prepare them for the coming storm. And now, with the Void Wraiths bearing down on them, they had no choice but to heed that warning. Sue turned to the council, her expression fierce with determination. "We have to act now," she said, her voice cutting through the din. "The Tesseract is our best hope against the Void Wraiths, but we have to understand its secrets before it's too late." There were nods of agreement from the assembled dignitaries, a newfound sense of unity in the face of this shared threat. But even as they began to plan and strategize, a new alarm sounded through the celestial concord, a klaxon that sent chills down Shu's spine. "Attention all personnel," a mechanical voice announced, echoing through the station's halls. "Incoming Void Wraith fleet detected. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill." Shu's heart raced as she turned to the council, her expression grim. "It's time," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at her gut. "We have to get to the Tesseract before it's too late." As the council members scrambled to their ships, Shu and Rensselaer raced through the celestial concord's winding corridors, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. They burst onto the observation deck just in time to see the Void Wraith fleet emerge from the depths of space, their ships dark and menacing against the starry backdrop. But even as the enemy closed in, Shu's eyes were drawn to the Tesseract, its hull pulsing with an otherworldly light. The glyphs on its surface were fully formed now, a warning and a promise all in one. "We have to get aboard," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "The Tesseract is trying to tell us something, and we have to listen." Rensselaer nodded, his face pale but determined. Together, they raced towards the waiting ship, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. As they boarded the Tesseract, Shu could feel the thrum of power beneath her feet, the seventh-dimensional drive pulsing with barely contained energy. The ship's crew looked up as they entered, their faces a mix of fear and determination. "Ambassador," Captain Ivanovna said, her voice steady despite the chaos that raged outside. "What are your orders?" Shu took a deep breath, her mind racing with the weight of the decision before her. The Tesseract was their best hope against the Void Wraiths, but to use it would be to unleash a power they barely understood, a power that could destroy them all if they were not careful. But as she looked around at the faces of the crew, at the resolve and courage that shone in their eyes, she knew that they had no choice. They had to fight, had to stand against the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. "We take the fight to the enemy," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "We use the Tesseract's power to push back the Void Wraiths, to show them that we will not go quietly into the night." There were nods of agreement from the crew, a newfound sense of purpose in their eyes. They knew the risks, knew the dangers that lay ahead, but they were ready to face them head-on. As the Tesseract powered up, the alien glyphs on its hull pulsing with an otherworldly light, Shu felt a sense of calm wash over her. They were on the brink of something great and terrible, a moment that would define the fate of the galaxy for generations to come. But as the ship slipped into the seventh dimension, the stars blurring into streaks of light around them, she knew that they were not alone. The Tesseract was with them, guiding them through the chaos and the darkness, its secrets waiting to be unlocked. And with that knowledge came a newfound sense of hope, a belief that they could face whatever lay ahead and emerge victorious. The Void Wraiths might be mighty, but they had not reckoned with the strength of the human spirit, the courage and determination that had carried them to the stars. As the Tesseract raced towards the enemy fleet, the glyphs on its hull pulsing with power, Shu knew that the true fight was only just beginning. But she was ready for it, ready to stand against the darkness and fight for the future of the galaxy. For in that moment, she knew that the Tesseract was more than just a ship, more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the darkness that threatened to consume them all. And with that hope, they would prevail, no matter the cost. The seventh dimension counterattack. The Tesseract hurtled through the swirling maelstrom of the seventh dimension, its hull pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Inside the ship, the crew worked frantically to decipher the alien glyphs that scrolled across the screens, their faces bathed in the eerie glow of the holographic displays. Ambassador Evelyn Tsiu stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. The Void Wraith fleet hung in the darkness of space, their ships a writhing mass of shadow and malevolence. They had emerged from the depths of the seventh dimension like a plague, their weapons tearing through the fabric of reality itself. But the Tesseract was not alone. The ships of the Galactic Federation had rallied to their cause, a ragtag fleet of vessels from a dozen different species, united in their determination to stand against the darkness. Ambassador, Captain Ivanovna called out, her voice tense with urgency. The Void Wraiths are moving to engage. What are your orders? Chu took a deep breath, her mind racing with the weight of the decision before her. The Tesseract's power was still largely untested, its secrets only partially unlocked. To use it against the Void Wraiths was a gamble, a roll of the dice that could either save them all or doom them to oblivion. But as she looked around at the faces of the crew, at the determination and courage that shone in their eyes, she knew that they had no choice. They had to fight, had to stand against the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. Engage the seventh dimensional drive, she said, her voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at her gut. We take the fight to the enemy. There was a moment of silence on the bridge, a heartbeat of hesitation as the crew grappled with the magnitude of the task before them. And then, with a nod of determination, Captain Ivanovna gave the order. The Tesseract surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it plunged headlong into the heart of the Void Wraith fleet. The alien ships scattered before them, their weapons firing in a frenzy of desperation and fury. But the Tesseract was faster, its seventh dimensional drive propelling it through the fabric of space and time with impossible speed. It wove through the enemy ships like a needle through cloth, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly light. And then, with a blinding flash of energy, the Tesseract unleashed its full power. A wave of seventh-dimensional force erupted from the ship's hull, tearing through the Void Wraith fleet like a scythe through wheat. Ships shattered and exploded, their hulls ripped apart by the sheer force of the blast. For a moment, the battlefield was silent, the only sound the hum of the Tesseract's engines and the distant roar of the Galactic Fleet's weapons. And then, with a cry of triumph, the Federation ships surged forward, their weapons blazing as they tore into the remnants of the Void Wraith armada. But even as the tide of battle turned in their favor, Shu knew that the fight was far from over. The Void Wraiths were a tenacious foe, their ships constantly regenerating and reforming, their weapons growing ever more powerful with each passing moment. And then, just when all seemed lost, the Tesseract sensors let out a shrill alarm. A massive energy signature was approaching, a presence so vast and powerful that it dwarfed even the Void Wraith fleet. Chu's heart raced as she stared at the view screen, her eyes widening in disbelief. There, emerging from the depths of the seventh dimension, was a being of pure energy, a creature so immense and ancient that it defied comprehension. It was the same entity they had encountered during their first foray into the seventh dimension, the being that had touched their minds and shown them the true nature of the universe. And now it was here, its presence a palpable force on the bridge of the Tesseract. Ambassador, Dr. Rensselaer breathed, his voice trembling with awe and terror. "What is that thing?" Xiu shook her head, her mind racing with the implications of what she was seeing. "I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I think it's here to help us." As if in response to her words, the entity pulsed with energy, its form shifting and morphing in ways that defied comprehension. And then, with a blinding flash of light, it engulfed the Tesseract, its energy flowing through the ship's systems like a tidal wave. The crew cried out in surprise and fear, their hands flying to their consoles as they struggled to maintain control. But Xiu stood firm, her eyes fixed on the view screen as the entity's energy coursed through her veins. And then, in a moment of perfect clarity, she understood. The entity was not just a being of energy, but a conduit, a bridge between the dimensions. And through that bridge, the Tesseract could channel the full power of the seventh dimension, could unleash a force beyond anything the Void Wraiths had ever seen. "Captain Ivanovna," Xiu called out, her voice ringing with newfound purpose. "Prepare to engage the seventh dimensional drive. Full power." Ivanovna nodded, her fingers flying across the console as she input the necessary commands. The Tesseract shuddered beneath their feet, its engines roaring to life as the entity's energy surged through its systems. And then, with a blinding flash of light, the ship vanished, slipping between the folds of reality as it hurtled towards the heart of the Void Wraith fleet. The enemy ships scattered before them, their weapons firing in a frenzy of desperation and panic. But the Tesseract was unstoppable, its hull shimmering with the power of the seventh dimension. It tore through the Void Wraiths like a hot knife through butter, its weapons blazing with an otherworldly fury. And at the heart of it all was Xiu, her eyes glowing with the same otherworldly energy that suffused the ship. She could feel the power of the entity flowing through her, guiding her actions with a precision and clarity that defied belief. Together, they carved a path of destruction through the Void Wraith fleet, their weapons tearing through the fabric of reality itself. Ships shattered and exploded, their hulls ripped apart by the sheer force of the Tesseract's power. And then, with a final, devastating blast, the last of the Void Wraiths was gone, their ships reduced to nothing more than dust and echoes in the vastness of space. For a moment, the battlefield was silent, the only sound the hum of the Tesseract's engines and the distant roar of the Galactic Fleet's weapons. And then, with a cheer of triumph, the Federation ships surged forward, their crews pouring onto the decks in celebration. But Xiu remained on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the view screen, as the entity's presence slowly faded from the Tesseract's systems. She knew that this was only the beginning, that the true nature of the seventh dimension was still largely a mystery to them. But she also knew that they had taken the first step, had shown the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. And with the power of the Tesseract at their fingertips, there was no limit to what they could achieve. As the ship slipped back into normal space, the stars blurring into streaks of light around them, Xiu felt a sense of hope wash over her. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, had shown the Void Wraiths that they would not be conquered so easily. And with that knowledge came a newfound sense of purpose, a determination to explore the secrets of the seventh dimension and unlock its true potential. For in that moment, Xiu knew that the Tesseract was more than just a ship, more than just a weapon. It was a key, a doorway to a new era of discovery and exploration. And with that key in hand, humanity would stride boldly into the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The war was far from over, but they had taken the first step. And with the power of the seventh dimension at their back, there was no telling how far they could go.